Welcome everyone. We will get started momentarily. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And if other people jump on as we're going through the introduction, that's great. The more the merrier. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our engineering webinar titled Engineering Solutions and Strategies for Safe Routes to School. My name is Corey Johnson. I'm the Program Support Manager here at Safe Routes Partnership, and we really appreciate you all joining us today. We have a great lineup of presenters to talk all about engineering and how to incorporate engineering into Safe Routes to School programs. So I'm going to kick us off with just a little housekeeping items before we start our first presentation. So for those of you who are just learning about Safe Routes Partnership for the first time, we are a national organization whose mission is to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and everyday life, improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, and abilities, and building healthy, thriving communities for everyone. You're joining us from GoToWebinar today, so a few little housekeeping items. You are able to join via phone or computer today. There should be a call-in number on the little control panel on the side. And you can also choose mic or speakers to be able to listen to our sound. Hopefully you all can hear us okay. And we'd love for you all to ask questions. We have time at the end for a nice, robust question and answer session. So if you have questions, please feel free to submit them in the question box, and we will hopefully be able to answer your question at the end of the session. We're also recording this webinar, so if you want to watch afterwards or share with colleagues, we should have a recording up on our website either later this afternoon or by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. So keep an eye out for our recording as well. So we wanted to just kick off with a quick poll question just to see who is joining us today. And we would like to know, in what capacity are you connected to Safe Routes to School? So take a moment. So are you a Safe Routes to School coordinator, planner, engineer, educator, community partner, if you're a parent, advocate, government official? We just like to get a sense of who is joining us today. And take another 10 seconds to get your responses in. All right, so you have about 90% of you, 10 more seconds. Give everybody a minute. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And I hope you all can see our results. So we have a lot of planners and engineers joining us today, which is awesome and makes sense since we're talking all about engineering. Some Safe Routes to School coordinators, great. Educators, partners, maybe some parents, advocates, government officials, and other interested parties. So thank you all so much for being with us this afternoon or possibly morning for some of you. And we hope that, yeah, this will be a nice informational session for you all. So just to kick us off and talk a bit about why we're talking about engineering today, I think that a lot of you are familiar with the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School, which is the framework that a Safe Routes to School program is based on. The 6 E's are engagement, equity, engineering, education, encouragement, and evaluation. And today we're talking all about the engineering E, which is creating physical improvements to streets and neighborhoods that make walking and biking safer, more comfortable, and more convenient. So all of our speakers are very well versed in this topic and will be sharing a bit about some of their experiences. So today we have Aisha Cohen, who is from Inspire Green, Brian Doherty, who's from the Seattle Department of Transportation, and Jackie Moore from Jackson County, North Carolina Public Health. And we're going to kick it off first with Aisha, and I'm going to turn things over to her and tell you a bit about her while she gets her presentation up. So Aisha Cohen is an urban planner at Inspire Green and a contributing author of several Urban Land Institute Building Healthy Places publications for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Colorado Health Foundation, and the Kresge Foundation on active transportation, stormwater management, corridor redevelopment, and affordable housing. And Aisha is just getting her presentation up.
Okay, so going back to the troubling trends, road traffic has become the leading cause of death for young people aged 5 to 29 years of age, and that's according to the latest World Health Organization statistics from 2018. Less than 1/4 of children from 6 years old to 12 years of age participate in at least 60 minutes of physical activity today. And air pollution is a leading cause of death for children under 5 annually, estimated to be 127,000 children, annually. So, and the images here are basically to show that as the car speeds at higher and higher speeds, it narrows the driver's field of vision, so they're less likely to see pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters, and the like in their periphery, which is why at higher speeds, as you can see on the right, there's more likelihood of serious injury or death upon impact. So that's what brings us here today in order to create safer routes to school through innovative design and engineering techniques. We were encouraged and inspired by a story that I heard on a webinar about, 2 years ago, shared by staff from Santa Ana. Santa Ana is a growing suburb in California. Some say that it's become almost as dense as the city of Boston because so many people are living in shared housing, but the city itself is set up in a quite a suburban manner. And that creates a lot of hazards on the road. The children and students of Santa Ana took it upon themselves to work with their parents, their educators, a nonprofit called KidWorks, and of course the city staff to change their routes to school in this suburban area of California. And collectively, they were able to secure $2.4 million for safe routes to school improvements. When I read their story, and I relate that in the report that we'll be publishing shortly, I was pleasantly surprised to see that their process matched the official guidance from the federal government. The Federal Highway Administration recommends that first you start with data collection and engaging the public, then you inventory conditions and prioritize locations for safety improvements. You analyze then crash types and safety issues. Next, you select the safety countermeasures. We'll be going through that in a little bit. Those are the sorts of treatments, design, or engineering that you'd like to change about the site to make it safer. Then you go through a design process, figuring out all your materials. And finally, you're identifying opportunities for innovative funding sources, partnerships, and of course, monitoring and evaluating the results of the changes that you're doing. exactly what the students in Santa Ana did. You can see they set up with a bunch of grown-up partners, survey booths and pop-up crosswalks and pop-up landscaping, and were able to really rally the community around. I'd like to also add that this was not a one-time effort. The folks who were involved in this process ended up, many of them signing up with the city to be civically engaged long-term. So it's a great story, and I think it's definitely replicable. Moving on, I wanted to say that there are many ways beyond pop-ups that you can do to engage members of your community early and often, so that you can start to think about not only the immediate safety concerns like crosswalks or bike lanes, or but also any underlying issues that might run parallel, such as displacement in the community, gentrification, environmental justice issues, where there might be environmental hazards that's underlying a lot of these safety concerns. So we encourage you to talk to your neighbors early and often. It's never too late, never too early. You can do lots of fun activities, borrowing from fields such as psychology, a technique which you describe in our report called cognitive mapping, which allows you to, through art, design, and storytelling, explain your vision, your cognitive map of your community. That helps you to share your collective knowledge and understand where the gaps are in terms of landmarks, modes, ways to get around and understand your community, and try to understand what you have and where you need to go. In terms of creating, there's great art workshops like Place It, which was featured, I believe, on a webinar not too long ago, which is started in Los Angeles, where I'm from. And that's using recycled objects. It's a great exercise for children and adults alike. It doesn't require PowerPoints. It doesn't require any written materials. It's simply gathering curlers and magnets from your junk boxes, putting them together and using it to create a vision of first your happiest place in your memory, something from your youth, and then using that memory to start to build consensus around the actual project that you'll build with those found objects collectively, and then start to reconcile and think about trade-offs in the study area. Lastly, there's in Los Angeles and in New York, they've used techniques that started in the 70s from Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator. It was originally called the Theater of the Oppressed. It's been given many different names throughout the years, but basically this community theater technique, these drama workshops, have empowered children and adults alike to have a stronger voice and about concerns that they've witnessed in their lives regarding issues such as affordable housing and displacement, tenant rights, and the like. And that those sorts of programs have empowered community members to speak at public meetings and give their public comment to decision makers when it counts. And the last thing is, don't forget, there's always the internet. The federal government has really great sources where you can click on anything as small as a city or even a block and find all kinds of information about healthcare, who owns what piece of land, the environment, etc. And I think, so for any age and any stage, there's always a good way to start that conversation. I also wanted to remind you guys that the Federal Highway Administration, that's the FHWA, has extended their comment period to hear your thoughts about traffic control devices. That's a fancy way of saying anything about pavement markings, signage, and including things like public art. Right now, this public art is allowed that you see from Portland. And it is a part of Portland's block party system that residents could, of course, pre-COVID, applied for. They have used that system to decorate intersections, which you see the children painting right there. And they have a system that is also incorporating community consultation to make sure that everyone's on board with the art before it gets put on the ground. But they have created over 70 murals in intersections that used to be just asphalt. So there's also programs from Austin, Texas to decorate crosswalks with community art, as well as Seattle has a community crosswalk program, which they've used to create over 40 creative crosswalks. And their lead engineer, Dong Ho Chang, is an active committee member with the federal standards division for that manual called the MUTCD, which is that federal guidance. So there's a will, there's a way, and there's always great case studies to look for, which we highlight in the report. Moving on to the 17 cut sheets, those are fact sheets that we encourage you to take to your decision makers, to take to your community members, to talk about the nuts and bolts of the engineering solutions that you can do under current federal guidance, again, which is getting updated this year. So right now we put it under 4 main categories: reducing vehicle speeds, updating pedestrian crossings, bicycle connectivity, and intersection safety. I'm going to jump just to show you a preview, sneak peek of what some of these layouts look like. For example, we have here one of the 17 is on-street parking. Here's a great example from Los Angeles, which is expanding this new type of parking sign soon. And this parking sign is consolidating the schedules, so you can look at a glance, what parking spot is available when. It consolidates signs, so what used to be a totem pole of 4 signs now is 1. How does that affect safety? Well, something as simple as making parking easier to understand will help reduce the amount of cars that are circulating around the school and pickup and drop-off zones. That helps air quality, because when cars are idling around looking for space, they're more likely to maybe accidentally hit a student or a staff member who's in the right of way. And also when they idle their engines, it's emitting noxious chemicals into the air, in addition to creating congestion around school zones. Little things like a sign, which started, mind you, with a design student in Los Angeles and expanded all over the world to Sydney and North Dakota. Anything is possible. And here to the right, you have an example of ladder crosswalks. Again, this is not officially approved by the federal government, but there's examples of it existing. Here's students in Arkansas who painted a crosswalk in partnership with artists. A similar initiative was done with the mayor of a town in Medford in Massachusetts. So there's always considerations there. Moving on, I wanted to show you a bit about the other sections. There's opportunities not to just do concrete when you shorten curb distances. You can always add plants that are native to your area that will help collect stormwater, reduce the runoff on the road, and help teach children about things like healthy food, local plants, pollinators, all that great stuff. For trails is another way through green alleyways along abandoned railroads, all sorts of historic rights of way that your city might own can be used to create trails in partnerships with nonprofits. There's even an initiative right now to extend a trail from coast to coast, which you can get involved in. And I'm not sure where I am with time. I just wanted to show you that even things like bike lanes can be gamified. In Portland, they have this cute competition with the library system, where the library system collects all the drawings and the kids compete, and whoever wins gets their winning design placed with recycled materials by the Public Works Department on a bike lane of their choice. So slowly but surely, artwork is making its way throughout Portland, and students are leading that design and learning about bicycles in the process through the library system. Even something like a traffic circle can be small enough to fit in a neighborhood and can really calm the street, slow the speed of the cars, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a leading cause of traffic because of that narrowed field of vision. This makes turning movements that normally would be a sore point for cars and bicyclists much more clear. And inside, like in Seattle, they can put benches and birdhouses and all kinds of fun things to make it interactive. In Seattle, there's over 1,200 traffic circles, and it's a very popular program. So you never know till you try. The last thing I want to show you is this. Again, it's not federally compliant, but could be one day. In Baltimore, where here near where I am in Washington, D.C., you have crosswalks that have hopscotch on them. Again, check with your engineer and to see what the regulations are where you live. Something as simple as a bike lane with some protection can be put up for a very inexpensive cost to test it out. And you can use landscaping to attract those bees and butterflies, grow some herbs, invite people to get active on their way to school. And all of this information and much more we've added here, depending on your budget, high-end types of engineering safety considerations that are, federally sourced. Any notes we have about what the official guidance is, anything about safety, things about cost. We also have a cheat sheet in the beginning to summarize what you would use when. So, and what sort of opportunities there are for art in different community contexts, urban, rural, and suburban. Thank you very much. Here's my contact info. Add me on LinkedIn, email me. I'm always available and love to talk with you. And please take a look at the Safe Parts website to see our report, which will be forthcoming later this month, as well as more resources from this webinar, so you can learn more and add your comments. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aisha. We really appreciate you sharing this. And just for those of you who may have missed out at the beginning of the webinar, Safe Routes Partnership worked with Aisha and her team Inspired to put together this engineering solutions guide, which will be published very shortly. So I'll let you know when that is up and available to you. I'm going to pass things over to Brian Doherty from City of Seattle.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Brian Doherty. Sound coming through okay?
Yes, it's all good. Sorry, I didn't do your intro because somebody's doing something outside and I didn't want to be muffled. But Brian, no problem. Great presentation.
Okay, I'm Brian Doherty. I work at the Seattle Department of Transportation in our project development division. I manage the team that implements pedestrian programs, which includes our Safe Routes to School program. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about our Safe Routes to School program, some of the engineering toolkit that we use, some example projects of walkways, crosswalks, some decorative projects, traffic calming open streets or closed streets, if you will, and some really low-cost sign solutions that pretty much any community member can use. So our Safe Routes to School program takes a holistic approach. I'm going to focus in on our engineering solutions today, specifically our low-cost engineering solutions, but our program also includes an education component that provides education, bicycle and pedestrian safety education to all 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in public schools in Seattle. We also provide mini grants that allow community organizations and schools to promote safe routes to school with encouragement campaigns. And all of this fits within the overall vision, mission, and core values of the department. So some examples of low-cost walkways that we've implemented. On the left, this was intended as a temporary solution to provide a dedicated walkway. So previous to this project, parked cars were in the space where you can see the child and adult walking, and kids had to walk either in the street or right on the shoulder of the street. So this provided a parking buffer between pedestrians and moving traffic. I wouldn't recommend using red on the walkway. This doesn't really exist anymore. It was again intended as a temporary solution. It was replaced with a traditional sidewalk a few years later. But then on the right, you can see a similar type of solution where we paved the edge of the roadway and provided some wheel stops to provide a barrier between the street and the pedestrian walkway. And low-cost walkways can be provided in a built environment where a traditional sidewalk with curb and gutter and drainage solutions can cost in the city of Seattle up to $800,000 a block. Now that's on the high end. Typically, we see costs in the range of $300,000 to $400,000 a block for a traditional sidewalk. About a third of the city doesn't have sidewalks or drainage. So providing these low-cost walkways, we can do it at a cost of $50,000 to $100,000 a block. So it really stretches our public dollars a lot further, and we can reach out to those communities and provide safer places to walk at a much lower cost. Here's another example of a low-cost solution that we applied. So this was a location that had really horrible drainage prior to the project, and cars would get stuck in this mud puddle. They had to be towed out. And then we dug out all that dirt and gravel and put in a swale and some barriers so that cars weren't parking in the swale, and a walkway. So that provided a really nice low-cost solution adjacent to a park. We partnered with our parks department to do this project and really provided a nice low-cost solution that really improved the walking environment. And this is another before and after. I apologize that the photo on the left is pretty low quality, but it shows a situation where we did have a walkway, but no curb and gutter. And what we see in these situations is often cars will park on top of the walkway when there's no buffer between the walkway and the roadway, which basically makes the walkway inoperable and really ineffective. So we dug out all that dirt and gravel, put in some nice soil, put in some street trees, and again, those low-cost curb options that we can do for a lot less expensive. It also provides an opportunity for the street runoff to go into the planting strip. And again, we have a nice walkway with a buffer between the moving vehicles and the parked cars at a cost of approximately $20,000 to $50,000 a block. So some decorative solutions. These are a few projects that we've done in the past few years to install curb bulbs with paint, with decorative paint and posts. We can also install bike racks in the roadway to provide that buffer, that curb bulb. And these can be done at a much lower cost than if we did this with concrete. So doing a curb bulb in concrete, typically we have to install new inlets, catch basins. It really drives up the cost. And doing it with paint and posts, is a much lower option. We can also engage the community in developing the designs and in selecting the designs so that there's really community buy-in and some pride in the designs that we install. When we do install concrete curb bulbs, one way to reduce the cost is to basically turn them into floating islands so that there's the flow line at the curb is uninterrupted, and then we don't have to install new inlets, which again reduces the cost and provides all the safety benefit that we want from a curb bulb. On the left is a median island, which is also really low cost. In this case, we also installed some zigzag lines, and the deflection that the island provides to the traffic really slows things down. And the zigzag lines have, in other locations, we don't have data in Seattle yet, but in other locations have been shown to really reduce speed and increase driver yielding compliance at crosswalks. And street murals and decorative crosswalks really provide an opportunity to use the engagement part of the Safe Routes to School program. So we can involve students in developing the designs. We can actually involve students in painting the murals. And we can help, in this case, on the left is one of our SDOT staff. Davi is a fantastic community partner and really worked with this community to install the street mural that you see. Street murals can be places, this is on the left, adjacent to a library. They can be places where we provide opportunity for the community to gather outside. We can also install some planters, as you see, to provide some green element to the projects. And then on the right, this is adjacent to a middle school where the school wanted to paint a mural of a jaguar, which is their school mascot, in the street at the front door of the school. And so we were able to provide a mini grant of $1,000 to the school so that they could get the paint, get the design approved by SDOT, the Department of Transportation, and go out there as a community and install that street mural. And some decorative crosswalks that we've installed adjacent to schools. This was a case where we engaged the school, and the students had a competition, and they selected the two crosswalks designs that you see, the one of the Space Needle on the left, and then the one on the right. It's a little hard to see, but those are Scotty dogs in the crosswalk, which is their school mascot. And then again, if you can see it on the right, we installed in-street bike racks to provide a buffer between the crosswalk and where people are parking and loading and unloading at school arrival and dismissal. So where that bike rack is now was a space where parents were parking and obscuring visibility of the crosswalk. And now with the bike rack there, they don't do that anymore. Speed humps and speed cushions are, I would say, the most effective and cost-effective traffic calming tool that we have in our toolbox. And we've done before and after studies that have shown the 85th percentile speed drops pretty significantly when we install speed cushions and speed humps. But even more important than that, if you look at the bottom row, Aisha mentioned the relationship between speeding and safety. And what we know is that the people who are the most likely to cause injury and death on our streets are those who are top-end speeders. So those are people who are traveling 30 or 35 miles an hour in school zones. And what we found when we've installed these is it basically eliminates those top-end speeders. 90 to 100% reduction in the number of people driving more than 35 miles an hour. And speed humps and speed cushions only cost about $5,000 or $6,000 to install. So for the benefit, they provide an amazingly effective benefit for really low cost. Some sign solutions. So the city of Seattle has now a citywide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on all non-arterial streets. And many schools are located in neighborhoods where they're surrounded by non-arterial streets. So installing signs that remind people that they're in a school zone where fines are increased if they exceed that 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and then sometimes pavement markings to reinforce that can sometimes be effective at reducing speeding in school zones. A somewhat new program that we have developed in the past couple of years is called Home Zones, where we develop a neighborhood-wide traffic calming approach rather than just installing traffic calming on one street, which oftentimes results in pitting neighbor against neighbor, where we install speed humps or traffic circles or other traffic calming devices on one street, and the neighboring street complains that now people are driving faster and cutting through on their street instead. And so we've developed a home zone program which works with the community to develop neighborhood-wide traffic calming projects that include things like speed humps, gateway treatments that tell you you're entering a home zone, and basically if you're in a vehicle, you're a guest on that street, and that pedestrians and bicycles are prioritized. In the center there you see a home zone plan that centers around an elementary school that included those treatments. And then as part of the home zone program, we're trying to include programming for the streets. So things like play streets, where schools or community groups can apply for a permit, a free permit, to close the street to allow opportunities for people to gather. So getting down to the least costly, and probably for community groups, the way that they can do things immediately, we can provide community groups with yard signs, as you see on the left, that remind people that the speed limit on non-arterial streets is 20. 20 is plenty. We have other signs that say stop for pedestrians, drive like you live here, and we provide those to community groups and neighbors at no cost. And then on the right, you see a group of parents and community advocates who got together to adopt a crosswalk and installed crosswalk flags at the crosswalk to improve visibility for people who were crossing the street. And they got together and designed the flags with some messages on them. And then there's DIY signs as well. So if you don't want the city's free traffic calming signs, we have seen neighbors get together, as you see here, and they got their own message that they put out to remind drivers to travel slowly on their streets. And the ones on the right are some of them are pretty funny. Feral children, slow down. Again, a fairly new thing in the past year with the response to COVID, we've developed a Stay Healthy Streets program, which provides open streets where it's open to local access only, and people can bicycle and walk in the street. And these have been done in many cases adjacent to schools, even though right now we're still working in an all virtual environment in the city of Seattle public schools. After schools do go back in session, we plan to work with schools who are interested in having what's called school streets. NACTO has provided some guidance on what that could potentially look like to provide opportunities for schools to use the right of way for learning opportunities, for exercise, gym classes. And there's my contact information. If you'd like more information about anything that I presented today, feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to talk with you.
Thanks, Brian. And as I mentioned before, we will be sharing all the presentations and the recording of the webinar on our website. So if you saw something you liked, feel free to check back and view the presentation again. And we are going to finish off today with Jackie Moore, who's going to share another great example of low-cost safe routes to school infrastructure project. And a little bit about Jackie. Jackie is the Safe Routes to School coordinator serving 4 counties in western North Carolina. This involves working with schools K-8 to get students more active through walking and biking programs, and she also facilitates the planning, development, and implementation of projects and activities that will improve safety. So I'm going to pass it over to Jackie, and Jackie, just let me know when you want me to advance your slides.
Ew. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you perfectly.
Very good. Well, hey, it's great to be here this afternoon. I'm excited to share low-cost engineering strategies and examples from a small rural community located in western North Carolina. I will share how we improved a walk-to-school program with little to no funding, making small changes while improving safety and accessibility for all students and staff. So the goal today is to share a few ways you can improve your community through small changes that build momentum for larger projects down the way. And the route to school that I'm going to talk about today is about 0.68 of a mile. Next slide. How it all started. This is Mayor Harry Bong, and in the fall of 2015, we were piloting a walk to school day from the town square to Hayesville Elementary School. The town square reminded me of a fort with businesses on all 4 sides and a one-way street connecting them. In the middle was a gazebo. Businesses were not open at 7:30 a.m., so there was plenty of space for parents to drop off kids with little traffic. Harry, as he recalled it, and I quote him, he moseyed over to find out what was going on as students with their backpacks exited the vehicles with the help of local school officials and were directed to wait under the gazebo. The pilot walk to school day began with a PE teacher and 4 other teachers along with the support from their principal, Hollingsworth. Harry asked why we were doing this, so I had the opportunity to share many benefits of walking to school and explain that this was the first school in western part of rural North Carolina I could find that had the infrastructure to support a walk to school program from a drop-off site using, in their case, the town square. Next. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, thank you. The PE teacher, Amy Shelton, pictured here, shared, and I quote her, "We want our kids to be active, so with the state cuts in PE time, anything that we can do to get more active is a plus. We need this program." So the following year, the middle school joined the Walk Wednesday program. Next slide. Once the students exit the car, safety starts in the very beginning, making sure we knew students were accounted for. So they actually check in and then they go to the gazebo. Next one. This picture shows the route that the students took. Amy Shelton led the students with a team of school staff as they began their walk to school. Next slide. So after the pilot walk, we noticed a few things that we wanted to follow up on and decided to do a walk audit. So we pulled together a team that included, from the far left, a parent of 2 disabled children. Next is the past EC teacher for Clay County Schools and the current assistant principal, the PE teacher who founded the Walk Wednesday program, the school resource officer from Clay County Sheriff's Office, the director of the Clay County Communities Revitalization Association who represented the local businesses, Mayor Harry, myself, and the NCDOT Division 14 engineer. From this survey, we learned that most of the identified barriers were not NCDOT roads, but the responsibility of the town of Hayesville. This put in motion ideas that were doable at little or no cost to make the Walk Wednesday safer for students. Next slide, please. So the first change was to reroute the walk, to go around the back of the gazebo to avoid the stairs. This change allowed for students with disabilities to participate in the Walk Wednesday event, and we wanted accessibility for all students. Next slide. Once we determined the reroute, we found that 2 crosswalks were needed. First, the town of Hayesville worked to remove 2 parking spaces, one in front of the town hall on the left and the other in front of Tiger's General Store. This allowed for the installation of 2 crosswalks making Walking Wednesday safer for the students. The Safe Routes to School program found that we could get paint at the NCDOT that one time at no charge. Next slide. A change we were excited about was to get new crosswalks. One crosswalk was added from the gazebo across the street. After walking down the street, a diagonal crosswalk was added for a safer walking environment for the students in town. Next. A very simple environmental change was to move the trash can back to create a wider walking path on the sidewalk. And what we noticed on the pilot walk were that little kids, they're not watching in front of them. And it was kind of an accident waiting to happen. So we decided it was some close calls on our pilot walk. So we decided we would move that back and create a wider barrier. Okay. The mayor worked with the antique store owner and other shopkeepers downtown to remove clutter from the sidewalk in order to reduce safety hazards and provide more walkway space for students. So all the clutter you see there in the slide on the left, everything has been removed. Okay. So this is a very small town that's fortunate to have the infrastructure to promote a walk to school program. They average about 80 to 100 students every Wednesday. Watching the train of kids walking to school creates a positive environment. The community that travel to their jobs see that these kids, they see the kids and get them involved. At first, it was just the teachers, and then a lot of parents started walking with their children on a regular basis. Mayor Harry asked school officials if the business community and the faith-based community can be included as well. So we saw a lot of the community walking. Next. Okay, Mayor Harry saw our banner and he offered to be, and I quote, the keeper of the banner. He stored it in his office across the street from the gazebo, and each week he would put it out before the Wednesday walks. Harry enjoyed walking with the group, getting to spend time with the kids and establishing relationships with the community partners as more and more joined. And Harry stated, and I quote him, he said, this was a great opportunity to get a walk in early in the AM and have a positive interactions with my constituents and their children. Next. This route allowed for wonderful community involvement as the children passed by many local businesses and historical sites along the way, and they became familiar with downtown traffic safety laws. Next. So among the many benefits that I've already discussed surrounding this program, the remote drop-off site has also allowed for less traffic congestion at the schools. The elementary, middle, and high school are all located on one campus, including the Board of Education. So as you can imagine, in the mornings, this made for a very high traffic volume. The remote drop-off site also allowed for faster and safer drop-off for parents and caregivers. Next. Students, the community census is basically that students love the excitement of being physically and socially active with their peers. And teachers have really appreciated the wellness focus that Safe Routes to School provides. The school administration feels the program has reduced tardiness because students don't want to miss it and they have to be on time for the walk. And if they aren't there at a certain time, there's a sandwich sign that's put up that says walk closed, and parents know at that point they need to transport their child to the school. After the walk, students arrive at the school cafeteria where every single student receives a free breakfast, is alert, hungry, and gets fueled for the day. Next. This slide shows that students got involved decorating doors and hallways, the walls, to remind everyone about Walk Wednesday. And my last slide, just a few takeaways. The little guy on the left just started the walk, and the little girl on the right had just finished the walk and was back in her classroom. And I happened to look up as I was walking by the window, putting away equipment, and I saw her smile. So my first thought was, worth it. The takeaways from this small project were the following. Small projects count and build momentum. Safety and community engagement works. Look at the low-hanging fruit and simple fixes. And lastly, a good faith effort on a small scale can lead to bigger changes later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. So we have a little bit of time left for Q&A, and I think that Michelle has been keeping an eye out on the question box. So we had Aisha kind of start us off on our broad scale engineering, and then Brian talking about what this looks like on a citywide level, and then Jackie kind of rounding us out with an infrastructure, low cost infrastructure that impacted a rural safe routes to school walking program. So lots to chat about. And Michelle, I didn't know if you've been flagging questions or if I should. Okay, got him. All right, so Aisha, I'm going to start with a question for you. You shared some statistics at the top of your presentation, and somebody wants to know if those statistics are for the U.S., North America, or the world. And I can go back to that slide if that would be helpful. And I will take you all off mute too.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So in the opening slide, the troubling trends slide, those statistics vary. When I talked about that road traffic with the leading cause of death for young people between 5 and 29 years of age, that's a world statistic. Unfortunately, that statistic about the pedestrian fatalities being at their highest level in 30 years, with over 6,000 people dead just by walking and being hit in traffic, that's here in the United States. So we are at the 30-year high in the United States. And that pales in comparison to other industrialized nations. So also, the other statistic that I mentioned was around air pollution, and that was a world one, and social isolation as well. So basically, I guess short answer, these are more general trends globally, and I did mention the one outlier fact about the United States with rising fatalities. Just as a point of comparison, in Sweden, as more people buy cars, the pedestrian fatality rates have been decreasing. And for example, where I'm from in Los Angeles, as more people buy cars, the pedestrian fatality and injury rates have been increasing. And a lot of that can be changed with Vision Zero policies and others that are implementing some of these 17 engineering solutions that we talk about in our report, and many more that we didn't have time to cover. So there's a lot to learn from one another about these trends and what we can do.
Great, thanks so much. A question for Brian. How do we encourage our highway district to allow the use of mural paint or colorful crosswalks near a school?
So I think one of the important things that would be helpful is if we had more data on the issue. And I'm not aware of a whole lot of studies that have been done that compare safety before and after. But from our experience here in Seattle, we have not experienced an increase in the number of pedestrian fatalities or injury collisions at the locations where we've installed decorative crosswalks. So I think that that's probably the strongest argument is if we can gather the data and show that that there is no correlation between the decorative crosswalks and a decrease in safety.
Great, thanks, Brian. And for Jackie, somebody wanted to know, oh no, did I lose the question? Oh, here we go. How important was it for the Walking Wednesdays program to be started by a teacher rather than a community member?
I think that with the teacher, either one could start the walking program, but I felt like the teacher had a vested interest and she could also remind the students. Her being the PE teacher, she just knew that it would give them more activity first thing in the morning, knowing that the students would fare off much better if they could get a walk in before school. So that was why, and she was also the first volunteer when I went and presented the program, and she said, I want to do this. So I do talk to the, I try to find a champion in the school. I found it's been pretty successful.
Great, thank you. And let's see, I think that we have time for one more. Brian, somebody wanted to know, oh, there have been a bunch of questions just about like maintenance for street murals and other painted, like painted crosswalks. So if you have any tips or just thoughts about how to, how you maintain painted crosswalks and streets and sidewalks.
Sure. And
a whole other webinar, but
yeah, I think you're right. But I would say that our policy in general is that if a community gets together and does a street mural, we don't maintain it. The community is responsible for the ongoing maintenance of the street mural, and they can get a permit to close the street, to repaint it, and many community organizations have done that. We've also provided, our mini grant program has provided money for community groups to paint them and then repaint them. So that's one of the only ways in terms of street murals that we have for maintenance. If the city installs the painted crosswalk, we do have some maintenance, especially like on arterial streets, they have a tendency to need some maintenance. But if it's a community organization that painted the mural, they're responsible for the ongoing maintenance.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian. So we are actually at the top of the hour. There were lots of questions that we were not able to get to, but we're going to save them, and hopefully we'll be able to get answers to some of these questions. After this webinar, you're also welcome to reach out to us or any of our presenters. And again, we will be sharing all the presentations, a recording of the webinar, and everybody's contact information. There were also a few questions about the engineering solutions guide that Aisha mentioned in her presentation, and that will be published shortly. I don't have an exact date for you, but it will be available to download on our website, Safe Routes Partnership, and we'll make sure that you all get a notification for when that is available for download. I'd like to give a big thank you to our presenters. Thank you to Jackie Moore, Aisha Cohen, and Brian Doherty. We really appreciate you all sharing your stories and experiences and expertise. And thank you all so much for attending our webinar today and expressing so much interest in engineering. Hopefully you got a lot of ideas that are inspiring you to take back to your communities. And as always, feel free to reach out to us afterwards with any additional questions or thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. We'll also be sending out a brief survey for you to help us improve our webinars and give us some feedback about how this one went and if there are any other questions or topics you want us to cover. So please take a moment to fill out our survey as well. Thank you all so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.